Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Fear No More, Tackle Your Debt. I'm Tammy West, Vice President, and I'll be today's moderator. Before we get started, I'd just like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of your attendee interface. You should see something like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. To expand or collapse your control panel, click the orange arrow button. You're listening in today using your computer's speaker system by default, but if you'd prefer to join over the phone, just select a phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. All attendees are muted for today's webinar. Click the handouts arrow to view or save the documents from today's webinar. And if you have questions during the meeting, please click the questions arrow and type your questions inside the panel box. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to your presenter, Robin Lind. Robin is the credit union's education coordinator and manager of the Student Credit Union program at Northwest and Colerain High Schools. Robin, take it away.
Thanks, Tammy. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Tammy said, I'm Robin Lind, and I'm looking forward to sharing some great information with you today. You just heard from Tammy West, our Vice President, and also joining us today is Julie Klepak. She's our Business Development Representative, and you can follow up with her if you'd like to arrange any financial education opportunities for yourself or for your workplace, or if you have any topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So as Tammy mentioned, all listeners are on mute at this time to eliminate background noise, but I encourage you to ask questions through the chat window, and Tammy's going to keep an eye on that for me throughout the webinar. So if you saw our last webinar, Budgets Don't Work, Using Conscious Spending to Change Your Life, you may remember that it was based on this book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And I wanted to let you know that some of the information and strategies we're going to talk about in this webinar came from this book as well. I highly recommend this book. It's extremely readable and it gives real life strategies and specific advice, especially for young people who are just starting out about investing in credit cards and credit card debt, paying off your student loans, and it's much more in depth than what I can talk about today. So I highly recommend this book. I've given it as gifts to recent college grads. I found it on Amazon. I know they also have it at the Cincinnati Public Library. Okay, so a recent Experian consumer debt survey found that the average American carries $90,640 in debt. Now, that includes all debt, so revolving debt like retail cards and credit cards, mortgages, home equity loans, car loans, student loans. But 70% of Americans do carry credit card debt, and half of them only pay the minimum payment each month. So it's safe to say that debt affects pretty much everyone. Now, I'm not a big Dave Ramsey proponent that credit cards are always bad. The key to using credit cards wisely is just to pay them off in full each month. Credit cards are not the enemy. They're actually a very useful financial tool if you use them properly. They can simplify keeping track of your money if you upload your statements to a budgeting app or software like You Need a Budget or Mint or Clarity Money, or if you use Quicken. They also provide consumer protections like travel insurance and extended warranties. They also provide car rental insurance. And they provide rewards like travel perks and cash back and discounts. So credit cards really aren't a bad thing, but what we want to do is we want to be a deadbeat consumer as far as the credit card companies are concerned. We want to pay them off every month and produce virtually no revenue for the credit card company. So what we want to do is treat it like a free loan that we pay off every month. Now, before we get started talking about debt, I want to talk about a very common question, whether it's better to pay down debt or if it's better to save. Having an emergency fund is a very critical piece of preventing debt. Your emergency fund can keep you from adding to your debt with each bump in the road, and it gives you a cushion for unexpected expenses. But 28% of Americans say they have no emergency savings, and 40% of Americans said that they couldn't cover a $400 expense without borrowing money. So it's critical to have an emergency fund for things like medical bills or car repairs, natural disasters, or something going wrong with your house. If COVID has taught us anything, it's to be prepared for the unexpected. You never know if you or your spouse might lose your job or have your income reduced. So you really need to make sure that you're prepared. So the best way to prioritize paying your debt and building your emergency, is to tackle them both bit by bit, okay? So here's how our priority is going to go with this. If you don't have any savings at all, if you don't have any emergency fund at all, your number one priority should be to start a basic emergency fund of at least $1,000 as soon as possible. If you don't have at least $1,000 in savings, you run the risk of adding to your credit card debt to pay for unexpected expenses. So $1,000, that'll cover most of your one-time expenses and keep you from getting into even more debt. So with this priority, you're still paying the minimum balances and all of your loan payments, but prioritize saving $1,000 in your emergency fund as soon as possible. Next, you're going to focus on paying off any debt that can be paid off quickly, say in a year or less. So any loans or credit cards that you have with your lowest balances, you're going to pay those off aggressively. And then once these smaller debts are paid off, you're going to use the money that you were paying on these debts to increase your emergency fund. And ideally, you want to build up to an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So let's say you were paying maybe $150 a month on a retail credit card. Maybe you bought something at Best Buy. As soon as you pay that off, you're going to take that $150 and you're going to redirect it to your emergency fund. If you put $150 a month in your emergency fund for a year, you're going to have $1,800. And then if you've already saved your $1,000, then now you're going to have almost $3,000. So you can see how it builds up over time. It builds up slowly, but it does build up. Now, how much you need in your fully funded emergency fund, it depends on a lot of factors. Does your household have one income or two? A single income family is going to need more of an emergency fund than two incomes. So I'd say at least 6 months. If you're self-employed, or if you work on straight commission, or if you have someone in your family who has a chronic illness, you're also going to need more padding. So 6 months, maybe even up to 8 months. But if you're a two-income family and your jobs are stable, you might need less. So 3 months is going to be your minimum. 6 months is even better. So again, until you have $1,000 in your emergency fund, make that your number one priority. And then after that, split the money and pay off your debt, and then put some of it toward your emergency fund until you build up at least 3 months, and then preferably 6. So what's the problem with debt? Well, first of all, you're paying interest on your balance. So you're paying more money for things that you've already purchased. And if you're only paying the minimum payments, you might end up paying for things long after you bought them. Second, your credit score suffers. 30% of your credit score is based on how much you owe. So if you owe a lot on credit cards and loans, your credit score is going to be lower and your interest rates are going to be even higher. And then third, anytime you take out a loan or charge something on your credit card, you're borrowing from money that you hope to earn in the future, and it keeps you from reaching your financial goals. Having to pay monthly debt payments limits the amount of money you have to spend on other things, like saving for retirement or vacations or fun things you want to do, or maybe even owning a home. And the more debt you accumulate, the more your monthly payments will be, and the less you're going to have to spend on anything else. And then finally, debt is always on your mind, and it robs you of your joy. You feel like you can't enjoy anything you do or anything you buy because you feel like you should have used that money to pay off your debt. And it makes you feel powerless and ashamed. And worst case, it can overwhelm you and lead you to not open your bills, and then you have late payments and even more debt, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So here's an example of the extra money and time that we spend trying to get rid of our debt. We have 3 different payment scenarios here. For the first scenario, we're only paying the minimum payment until the card is paid off. You'll see that we start with a $100 a month payment. The minimum payment that is listed on your statement, that's a variable amount. It's always going to be 2 to 5% of your balance, depending on your credit card. So your minimum payment is going to decrease as your balance goes down. So in this case, it's 2% of our balance. So we're going to start off paying $100, and then as our balance goes down, we're going to only pay the minimum payment. This payment plan is not designed to pay off your credit card. This plan is designed to make a lot of money for your credit card company. Because your minimum payment decreases along with your balance, it stretches your payments out, which costs you more money overall and takes a lot more time, and it makes a lot of money for the credit card company. In our second scenario, you're going to pay a fixed amount of $100. So even as your balance goes down, you're going to keep paying $100 until it's paid off. So you can see that this takes just over 6 years, and this method is going to save you $3,774 in interest. And then in our third scenario, you're going to be paying double the fixed amount. So you're going to be paying $200 a month fixed until it's paid off. And you can see that this method takes you from 25 years and over $6,000 in interest to 2.5 years and less than $1,000 in interest. So it's always important to pay more than the minimum on your credit card, and to pay it off quickly, you always want to pay as much as you can. So before we can start to make our plan, we need to make sure we get organized first. So sit down with all of your bills and make sure everything is current. Make sure your email address is correct and you're able to get into each bill. And next, try to arrange for all of your bills to be due on the same day or the same 2 days, depending on how you get paid. If you get paid once a month, maybe have all your bills due on the 1st. If you get paid twice a month, maybe have some of them due on the 1st and some of them due on the 15th. But this is going to be the easiest way to simplify the process and make sure you pay all of your bills on time every time. So most places will work with you on this. Just give them a call and tell them that your payment is currently due on X day and you'd like for it to be due on the 1st, or whatever day works for you. Next, you're going to set up bill pay for all of your bills. You want it to be as easy as possible to pay your bills. So taking a few hours now to get it organized, it's going to save you a lot of time and effort in the future. So go ahead and make sure that you have all those bills set up so you can easily send money. Next, make sure you set up reminders for all of your payments. Either set them up on your calendar or set them up on bill pay to let you know which one is due, when each one is due, so you don't forget. And then finally, you're going to set up automatic payments for your debts so you don't have any missed payments or late fees. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So step one to getting rid of our debt is, first step is going to be to figure out exactly how much you owe. So we're going to create a spreadsheet and so that we can total it all up and keep track of it as we pay it off. So you'll start a spreadsheet in Excel. For each debt, you're going to list what the debt is in the debt description. So either the credit card name or the loan and the type. So if it's a mortgage or your home equity loan, your car loan, your student loan, you're going to list that as the debt description. Next, you're going to list the total amount. What is the full payoff amount for each one? Next, you're going to list what the APR is of each debt. And then finally, you're going to list your minimum monthly payment. Now, this part might seem overwhelming and it might be hard to see the total amount of your debt in black and white, but keep in mind Ramit's quote from the beginning of this presentation. We're starting to make a plan, and a plan turns debt from a hot emotional topic to a cool math problem. And most of all, a plan gives you control. So once you have a definitive list of exactly how much you owe, you can start to make your plan. Now, step two is going to be to decide how you want to pay off your debt. Different cards and different loans charge different interest rates, which can affect how you decide to pay off your debt. So here you're going to see two different methods here. The first is called the snowball method. Now, it's important to remember for both methods, you're going to pay the minimum payment on all of your debts, okay? But with the snowball method, you're going to attack the smallest balance with a vengeance. And then once that one is paid off, you're going to take the money you were paying on that one, plus the minimum payment on the next smallest balance, and you're going to attack that one with the same focused intensity. And you're going to keep doing that until all of your debts are paid off. Now, the other method is the standard method, or you might hear it called the avalanche method. And in this one, you're going to pay off the debt with the highest APR first, and then you're going to pay off your debt with the next highest APR, and so on. And this method is going to save you money overall. If you have larger amounts of debt, the avalanche method can also reduce the time it's going to take to pay off all of your debt. So both of these methods work. It's just a matter of your personal preference. This is a fierce debate with financial planners. If you look it up, you'll see all kinds of opinions on this. Technically, the snowball method isn't the most economical approach because the card with the lowest balance might not have the highest APR. But on a psychological level, it's really rewarding to see your cards and your debts get paid off. Which in turn makes you feel like you can pay off the others. So you get to have these small victories along the way and you really feel like you're getting somewhere. But the standard method will save you money, and mathematically it is best to pay off the debt that's costing you the most. So the bottom line is just pick a method and get started. Whichever one works best for you and your situation and your personality, the best method is going to be the one that you can stick to. So just pick a method. Don't spend a whole lot of time on this. You know yourself best. So pick which one works best for you and get started. Now, as you're starting to create your debt payoff plan, use calculators to see what extra payments will do to your loan so you can pay it off most effectively. We have some great calculators at copfcu.com, including how long will it take to pay off my credit card, or how long will it take to pay off my loan? How will extra payments affect my loan? So I encourage you to play around with these calculators as you're making your plan to help you make your plan and decide on which is the best way to do it. So once you've decided on a method to pay off your debt, we're going to work on lowering our interest rates on all of our credit cards. If you attended our last webinar, this might look familiar. We used it as one of our big wins to find more money in our budget. In 2019, the average interest rate on credit cards was around 17%, and it could be as high as 23 to 24% for people who don't have good credit. So negotiating your interest rate can be a huge win in reducing your payment and how much you owe overall. So to do this, you're going to start with your oldest card, one you have a history with, and hopefully a good payment record. You'll want to know your current terms. What is your current rate and your current balance, and how much interest have you paid over the past year? Next, do your research. Look for competing card offers. If you find a similar card with a better rate, make a note of the card name and the company and the term. This is going to help you know what you want to ask for. Next, it's a good idea to know your credit score. If it's good, you can use it as leverage along with your good payment history with them. They're going to be a lot more willing to work with you if you have a good track record. So once you have all of this information, you're just going to call the number on the back of the card and you're going to make your case. So it's a good idea to have a script or some talking points ready, and you're just going to say, hi, this is so-and-so. I've been a customer for X amount of years and I have a good payment history and I'd like to lower my interest rate to 10% or 12%. Have a number in mind that you'd like to ask for. And now this is a really good time to mention if you received an offer in the mail or you saw a different credit card, mention that to them. I saw X credit card for X interest rate and I'd like for you to match it. And be sure to keep track of who you talked to. Keep a record of who you talked to and when and what was said. In case you need to follow up, nothing is more effective than having notes of what was said if you have to call back. So a lot of credit card companies are going to be willing to work with you on this. But what if they say no? Well, first, calmly ask why and listen to what they have to say. These are things that you can work on to make your standing with the company better. Next, you could ask for a temporary reduction, maybe 6 months to a year if you have a financial situation going on. So if you've just had a baby or you have a medical situation or maybe there's a job loss in your family, ask if they're not willing to permanently reduce it, maybe they can give you a temporary reduction of 6 months or a year. And then finally, take 6 months to a year to improve your standing with the company. Make sure you're making your payments on time. Try to reduce your balance. Your credit utilization is 30% of your credit score. So if your balance limit is $5,000 and you have $5,000 on the card, you're using 100% of your credit card utilization there. So pay more than the minimum payment and reduce your balance, and those things are going to improve your credit score. And then call back in 6 months to a year. Legally, they do have to review it 6 months later. So give them a call back, and tell them that you've improved your standing and you would like to know if they would reconsider. And then finally, don't forget, if you are successful on these, don't forget to go back and change the APR that you have listed in your spreadsheet. So step 4 is going to be to decide where you're going to get the money to pay off your credit cards and your debts. So we're going to talk about paying off debt a priority. We'll talk about cutting spending in a few areas, rethinking our subscriptions, and negotiating some of our costs and our bills. Now, one thing people ask about is transferring their balance to a 0% card. And that can be a good temporary fix. It could save you some money, especially if you have a high balance, but it can bring down your credit rating by opening new credit. And a lot of these cards have tricks with a low APR that goes much higher when the 0% period is over. So make sure you read the fine print before you commit to anything. People also ask about getting a home equity loan to consolidate their debts. And that's another one. It could work depending on how much debt you have and what your current interest rate is. But keep in mind that if you run into trouble and you can't make your payments, now you risk losing your home. So if your situation maybe isn't stable, maybe it's not a great idea to do a home equity loan, and put your home on the line, to pay off your debt. So really the best answer is to reduce your spending and change your spending habits and prioritize your debt. This is going to be the most sustainable way to pay off all of your debt. So our first option to cut our expenses, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Dave Ramsey envelope system, where you budget a certain amount of money for things, and then when the money is gone, it's gone. Typically, 80% of what you overspend is used toward only 20% of your expenditures. So the envelope system is a great way to pare down your spending on things so you can apply that money to your debt. So you budget what you want to spend on certain categories for the month, and then that's all you get. So for this system, you could use actual envelopes, or you could have a checking account with a debit card only for these expenses, or maybe you use just a specific credit card only for these expenses. So this isn't an envelope system for all of your expenses. That's way too tedious. Just choose a few key areas where you might want to cut back. Maybe it's dining out. Maybe it's shopping. Maybe you have collections or you have hobbies that you spend a lot of money on. The key is to make sure you're making, small bite-sized changes that are going to become a habit. So notice we didn't, in this example, go straight to $250. We started at $500 a month, and then we gradually cut it back over 6 months. So maybe start with packing your lunch a few days a week or ordering pizza on Fridays instead of going out, and making other sustainable cuts as you go along. And rethinking your subscription. I'm sure you're surprised to see that the average person spends $237 a month on subscriptions for a total of almost $3,000 a year. But think about all the subscriptions that you may have. Maybe you have a gym membership, maybe you have Netflix or Hulu or both. Maybe you subscribe to something like Birchbox or Audible. We all probably have music streaming, app subscriptions, and then cable, satellite TV, meal services. So it's a really good idea to go through your subscriptions from time to time to make sure you're not wasting your money. I did this a few years ago, and I was really surprised. For our family of four, we actually had three different music streaming services. We had Spotify because my daughter had an Android. We have Amazon Prime for Alexa, and we had Apple Music for the rest of the family. So we canceled Spotify, which was $14 a month. And then I realized I had HBO Now for a show that we had finished watching a few months ago. And that was another $14 a month. So right there, that's $30 a month that I was able to cut out of our budget for things that we weren't even using. Maybe you have an Audible subscription. The Cincinnati Public Library has great free audiobook streaming. They have two great apps. They have Libby and they have Overdrive, and you can borrow thousands of books for free. Your cable or your satellite, that's another easy one to negotiate. You know, maybe you choose a different package or you cut out some channels, or maybe you cut having, you know, cable or satellite altogether for a while until you get yourself out of debt. Same thing with your gym membership. I think one of the very few silver linings of COVID is the options to work out at home have really exploded over the past 6 or 8 months. So it's really easy. You can find thousands of different videos on YouTube. You know, so maybe you cut out your gym membership for a while, you know, just until you pay off your debt, and then maybe you resubscribe to these things. With any luck, you'll find that you know, were spending money on things you really didn't want or need, you know, and you can cut it out for good. Three bills you can negotiate. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of hospitals and medical practices will often take less if you pay in full and early. You know, so if you have some medical bills, make sure you contact, you know, the medical practices and see if this is something that they would be willing to do. Next is your insurance costs. You should always reevaluate your insurance every few years. Call your insurance provider and negotiate a lower rate, and shop around for price quotes every few years. If your car has gotten older, make sure you ask for a higher deductible and reduce your coverage. If your homeowners and life and car insurance aren't all from the same provider, see if it'll make a difference if you have them all in the same place. And also, this one might surprise you, but insurance companies use your credit score and factors like your payment history and your total debt to assess your risk level. Research shows that your credit score is a very accurate predictor of your accident potential. Statistical analysis shows that people who have a lower credit score are more likely to file a claim, and people who have higher credit scores tend to get in fewer accidents and cost insurance companies less than people with lower credit scores. The Federal Trade Commission did an independent study, and they found that it was true that your credit score is an effective predictor of risk. So Ohio is one of the states that does use this as a factor in your rate. So if your credit score has improved since you got your insurance, see if you can renegotiate your rate. And then finally, your rent. Some landlords will lower your rent if you sign for an extended lease or if you have a long history as a good tenant. You know, so if you pay your rent on time and don't have any complaints against you and keep the property nice, you know, that's something they might be willing to work with you on. Another option, you know, there's a limit to how much you can cut from your budget, but there's no limit to how much you can earn. So find some ways to add to your income. If you're a teacher, you know, maybe you can try tutoring or getting a coaching position or be an advisor. If you have a job where, you know, you can do side jobs, so maybe you're an HVAC or you're an IT or an electrician, you know, doing a couple side jobs a month. Uber Eats and Grubhub, those have really exploded in recent months with people not wanting to leave their house, and also delivering groceries. Maybe you can make crafts, you know, you're a crafty person and you can sell your things on Etsy. Or maybe you have unused items, you know, an old treadmill or something that you can sell on Craigslist. Also, seasonal jobs, those are about to start coming out, you know, so maybe you work at Target for a couple months to get some extra money to pay off your debts. And then finally, there are a lot of sites. I think another aspect of COVID is I think we've realized that it's easier to work from home than ever, and we all have skills and talents that we can offer. So maybe you can be a virtual assistant or look for on Craigslist or LinkedIn for work from home opportunities. Every little bit counts. If you got a tax return of $2,400 last year, that's money that you could have gotten in your paycheck. So make sure you revise your W-2 so that you're getting that money in your check and you're getting extra money every month, not as a refund. You should always have a plan for your next $100. Where's it going to go? So any extra money that you make, any windfalls, decide how much of that you're going to put toward your debt. So maybe of your next $100, maybe you're going to put $60 toward your debt, or maybe all 100. Make sure you have a plan. And then also, and this is important, make sure that you set up automatic transfers to pay your debts. So you can afford late fees and penalties. So whether you chose the standard method or the snowball method, make sure that you have that as an automatic payment, and that is paying that debt every single month, whether it's $100 or $200, and it's automatically going. There's no magic wand here. Nobody gets out of debt without giving up some small pleasures and conveniences here or there. But everything you do gets you one step closer to being debt free. So keep in mind that this is temporary. If you're cutting your cable or, things that you enjoy, or if you're taking on a second job, keep in mind it's temporary. And the more you pay now, the faster you're going to get out of debt. So this is going to be a short-term pain, but it's going to give you long-term freedom and peace of mind. So step 5 is just to go ahead and get started. If you watched our last webinar, you heard me talk about the 85% solution, which is one of my favorite parts of Ramit Sethi. He's very realistic about people and our psychology. The 85% solution means you shouldn't sit around and try to figure out the perfect way to pay off your debt and research every last corner to decide where the money should come from. It's action. 85% is better than 0% any day, right? So the key is to just take action today and just get started. So you've figured out how much debt you have. You've decided on a strategy, either the snowball or the avalanche. You've negotiated your interest rate. So now it's just time to get started. As you go, you might find that some things work better than others, and you can always tweak your plan, but the trick is just to get started. What about student debt? Student debt is the most common form of debt right now, more than credit cards, mortgages, or any other kind of loan. The average student graduates with $30,000 in student loans. And it's important to keep in mind that even if you declare bankruptcy, you still have to pay your student loans. But student loans are considered to be a good debt. College grads earn an average of $1 million more over a lifetime than people with a high school diploma. So if you're wondering if it's worth it to get that college degree, yes, it is. Now, when your student loans go into repayment, you're going to be asked to choose a payment plan. And if you don't choose one, they're going to automatically place you in the standard repayment plan. And this plan will have your loans paid off in 10 years. So with this plan, you're going to pay less interest because your term is shorter, but your monthly payment is going to be higher than with other repayment options. So if you're having trouble making your payments, switch to a different payment plan by contacting your loan servicer. And you can switch to a different plan at any time to suit your needs and your goals. So play around with some financial calculators to see how paying different amounts changes the total that you're going to owe and your monthly payment. So you're going to find a lot of different options at studentaid.ed.gov. One option is going to be a graduated repayment program where you pay less in the beginning and then you're going to increase as you presumably pay more or earn more, I'm sorry. As you earn more money, your payment is going to increase. So usually it increases every 2 years. You're going to pay more interest overall than with the standard repayment plan, but this one might fit your budget better. They also have an extended repayment plan, which is a 25-year term, and that can be fixed or graduated. They have income-based plans where your monthly payments are either going to be 10 or 15% of your discretionary income, depending on when you first received your loans, but never more than you would have paid under the 10-year standard repayment plan. But if you decide to, try to switch to a different payment plan, keep in mind that if you're trying to get public student loan service loan forgiveness, make sure that you choose one of the income-based repayment plans. Public student loan forgiveness is a government program where if you meet certain qualifications, your loans can be forgiven after you make 120 on-time payments, which is 10 years of payments. So I do have more information on that if you'd like some more information. It's a little bit too much to go into right now. So some strategies to pay off your loans faster. First, make sure you sign up for auto pay. Most loan servicers will give you a 0.25% rate deduction if you have your payments automatically deducted from your bank account. Second, make sure that you pay interest during your grace period. Once you graduate, you're going to get 6 months of a grace period before you have to start paying for your loan. So if you can, start paying the interest during your grace period. This isn't going to necessarily speed up your payoff process, but it is going to mean that you're going to have a smaller balance to get rid of. So you can either pay monthly interest payments or you can pay a lump sum before your grace period ends. Next, make sure that you're making any extra payments the right way. Student loan servicers might apply the extra amount to next month's payment. So make sure if you're paying an extra payment, tell them to apply those overpayments to your principal. And again, also, if you have multiple loans with the same servicer, make sure you tell them this is an extra payment, not an early payment, and to apply the extra payment to the loan with the highest interest rate. Use any windfalls that you get to make extra payments. So if you get a raise, apply some of that to your student loan repayment or other debt. If you get a bonus or a tax return, make sure you pay at least some of that toward your debt. You know, it doesn't have to be all of it, but at least some. And then finally, make biweekly payments. If you pay half of your payment every 2 weeks instead of making one full payment monthly, you're actually going to wind up making an extra payment each year, which will take time off of your repayment schedule and lessen your interest costs. And then finally, make sure that you choose a repayment plan with the highest monthly payment that you can afford, so you're making as big of a dent in your debt as possible. The pros and cons of consolidating federal student loans. It would be, first of all, you're just going to have one payment and you're going to have a fixed interest rate. So if you have a lot of loans, you probably have several different rates. So this is going to give you one fixed rate, one payment for the life of the loan. They will have different repayment plans to fit your situation. And then deferment options. Because it's a new loan, it's going to restart the clock on deferments or forbearance for up to 3 years. Now, they have this listed as a pro, but you really don't want to defer unless it's your only choice. Interest is still collecting while you're in forbearance, so you're going to wind up owing more overall. So the best option is to work with your loan servicer to work out a better payment plan and only use forbearance or deferment as a very last-ditch effort. Now, cons, if you consolidate, again, you could lose your student loan forgiveness option. So make sure you look into that. If you think you're eligible for that program, you know, if you're thinking about consolidating, you know, make sure that you aren't eligible for those and you don't cancel out your eligibility. Another con is you can only consolidate one time. If interest rates fall after you consolidate, you're going to be stuck with that interest rate for the life of the loan. And then finally, private loans cannot be consolidated into a federal consolidation loan. So if you have both federal and private loans, you can't consolidate them all into the same federal loan. So should you refinance? At the very least, refinancing your student loans can make your life easier by consolidating multiple loans into one monthly payment. And in a best case scenario, you might be able to save money and pay off your student loans faster if you're able to refinance your loan at a lower interest rate. So if you have a higher interest rate or if you have multiple loans, it's probably a good idea to refinance. And again, use a student loan refinancing calculator to see how different rates and terms are going to be, will affect your loan. If your credit score has improved, if you applied for your loan while you were a student, chances are your credit has probably improved since you've gotten a higher paying job and you have a longer credit history. So if your credit has improved, it makes sense to look into refinancing. And if you were rejected for refinancing in the past, try again after you've maybe paid off some of your credit card debt, or if you've gotten a raise and improved your credit score. But make sure that your finances are stable. If you refinance, your federal loans aren't going to be eligible for income-driven repayments. So if it's likely, if your job situation isn't very stable, or there might be a reason you might not be able to make your payments consistently, you shouldn't refinance until you make sure you have a stable situation. But if you have private student loans, you really don't have anything to lose by refinancing because private loans aren't eligible for federal student loan forgiveness. Now, I usually don't talk about things we offer at COPFCU in our webinars, but we really do have a great student loan refinance program. So if you're thinking about refinance, definitely look into it and check it out on our website or call one of our loan officers. You can refinance from $5,000 to $125,000, and you can refinance both federal and private student loans. And we have a couple different repayment terms. And our rates actually right now are very good. It's always prime minus 1%. So we do have really good rates. One thing that's important to keep in mind is that Parent Plus loans can only be refinanced by the student who benefited from the proceeds. So unfortunately, parents are not eligible for student loan refinance program at this time. But if you have any questions about that, please contact me or one of our loan officers to give you more information. Finally, if you're struggling to pay all of your debts, definitely don't ignore the problem. All debts are not created equally. Generally speaking, paying secured debts is going to be more important than paying unsecured debts. So your secured debts are going to be your collateralized loans, like your mortgage, your home equity loan, your car payment. And then unsecured debts are going to be things like student loans, private loans, and credit card debt. Generally speaking, your secured debts should take precedence over your unsecured debts. You don't want to lose your home to foreclosure, so staying current on your mortgage should be a huge priority. And it might make sense to not pay for your department store credit card bill for a while if it means that you can make the payment on your car loan, especially if you need your car to get to work. But above all, be sure that you communicate with your creditors. It's way better to contact them upfront than to wait until you've missed some payments. So almost all lenders are willing to work with people. So if you've experienced a job loss or if you have a medical situation, one of the first things that you should do is call all of your creditors and make them aware of the situation and see what they have to suggest. And if what you really need is money management education or budget counseling, definitely consider getting help from a credit counseling organization. These agencies can suggest different options for helping you get out of debt, and they can provide specialized help. Some of these credit counseling agencies can contact your creditors to help set up payment plans, or they can help you create an overall debt management plan. But make sure that you avoid scams. A lot of people who are in debt, you have a lot of shame about it. You have a lot of stress about it. Maybe you have bill collectors calling you on the phone. So it leaves you in a vulnerable position. So make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of. Make sure that you check out these companies' credentials first. Some of them charge excessive fees and they don't do what they promise to do and they give bad advice. So all of these companies should discuss alternative ways with you to deal with your debt. So be sure to check them out at the National Foundation for Credit Counseling or the American Fair Credit Council. And finally, make sure you don't go to a credit repair clinic. These places say that they can fix your credit, but they can only legally do what you can easily do yourself. And in worst case, some of these companies use questionable tactics that can get you into trouble. So make sure you do your research before you work with anyone on your debt. We do work with Trinity Debt Management. They are a nonprofit agency, and they can help you with things like taking control of your spending, learning money management, planning a monthly budget, debt management, and credit counseling. So I highly recommend Trinity. You can find them at trinitycredit.org, or if you can give us a call and we can give you more information about Trinity. Okay, well, we've reached the end of my presentation. I hope you learned something today. You know, the most important thing is to just get started. So put any money you have toward debt. It takes some time and you might have to give some things up temporarily, but it's going to give you the long-term peace that you are looking for, and it's going to be worth it in the end. So now I'll open it up for any questions.
At this point in time, I don't see that anyone has entered a question into the questions area. Anyone would like to do so, we encourage you to do that now.
In the meantime, I will let everybody know that this webinar was recorded, and I did upload the slide deck as handouts in 2 different formats, so you're eligible to download those. You should receive an email with the recording within a few hours, and you can also access it in all of our webinars at our website, copfcu.com/webinars. So if there are...
We still do not have any questions, so.
Okay. Well, if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to contact me, send me an email, give me a call. And also, if you would like a financial curriculum for your workplace, please contact Julie Klepak. If you have any suggestions for webinar topics that you would find useful in the future, you know, definitely let me know. I'm always looking for different webinars that we can put on. So if there still aren't any questions.
We did have a member ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, Amanda wants to know a little bit more about student loan forgiveness. And Amanda, what we will do is reach out to you to provide you some more information about that for sure, because that can get into quite a conversation. So we will reach out to you and maybe schedule a time where we can give you more information and some specifics on that.
Great, yes. All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. You know, I hope you learned something. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining us.